I like to start with things in the picture that are okay to mess up a little bit and they won't ruin anything. So probably the flowers and the foliage and stuff like that. It's easier to start with, and if things aren't quite right, it's okay. They'll still look like flowers. So I'm going to grab my red or my orange, whatever color you have for this darkest color of the, let me brighten up my camera actually.
We're going to go directly to color, eh?
Yeah, this is the kind of like straight ahead animation. This is like straight ahead drawing. And we're going to start with this flower way over here in the upper left corner. So we just need a little bit of room for that bit of petals on the top, a little bit of space over there. You can imagine kind of a square. Leave that square on your paper, but I'm going to start way over up in this corner. And let me even zoom in a little bit. We're going to just zigzag around this really, really smushed oval, isn't it? If you look at it and it were smooth, it would be a really smushed oval. But instead of doing a straight oval, I'm just going to wiggle my pencil around. This is nature, so it's wild and free. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. Oh, my camera's too bright now, isn't it? Let's darken that down. I'm just doing this wiggly little zigzag line, and I want to make it a little thicker so we can see what's going on here. So I'm just following my same line, coloring it in. Try not to have a death grip on your pencil or push too hard. You'll get tired so fast. You're just going to have like a medium pressure. Get that color on there. The very humble beginnings of your next masterpiece here.
It looks great.
It looks beautiful already. And we're going to grab our yellow pencil. And on the inside here, I'm just going to fill it in with my yellow color. You can go right over the top of that orange or red that you put down. That's how you blend your colored pencils. You're always taking the color right over the top of the last color. I might even come back in with my orange and put a little more on top here, just to give it some variation. And then you can see we'll have a little bit of the yellow on the outside too. This is the outside edge of that like little inner cup section of this flower. So I'm going to add more yellow to the edges here. And then with my red or my orange, whatever you started with, anytime there's a little point, I'm just going to add a little bit of a line to show the wrinkles and the back and forth motion of this petally part here. So I'm going to put in a couple of lines. No big deal. If it seems too complicated, you can skip it and it'll still be fine. Then we're going to go right into this green that's right up against the edge of that yellow part. So I've got my darker green pencil here. Just going to color a little bit at that base. Nothing fancy. And with a lighter pressure, I'm going to start sketching out the shape of this petal, which is sort of a curvy, what, trapezoid, rectangle, one of those shapes. Really, really
A
lightly.
lighter, a
No,
lighter
same.
green?
Same pencil, I'm just using lighter pressure. Just because I'm not a master at straight ahead drawing, so sometimes I need to sketch out a little bit first. But again, since it's nature, petals blow this way, that way, and grow all kinds of ways, so you don't have to worry too much about getting the shape exactly right. And you can see these almost like stripes of shadows showing the petal wiggling around there too. So I'm just going to very lightly fill in a little shadow here with that same green, just really light pressure, barely putting any pressure on it at all, just dragging it across the paper. The secret to this part is you don't want it to be even all the way down like a stripe. You want to have some thick sections, some thin sections, and that'll make it look a lot more like an actual shadow rather than a pattern. Stripes are patterns, and patterns are great for t-shirts, but not so much for flower petals. I'm going to come back with either a gray or a light blue, just kind of tone down this green a little bit. You don't have to color directly on top of that same shape. We're going to kind of overlap it. Just kind of blending in that color. I know it's really faint and probably very hard to see on the screen here, but that's how delicate you want to be so that it's barely seen. Just gives another layer of color blending, depth. I think that's the first major step when you're getting good at colored pencils. You realize that you can never color anything with just one color, with just one pencil. Everything's layered like this with grays and greens and blues. We want to try to get all those colors to merge and blend in with one another. If we were using paint, it'd be easier because you just get some water, you take your dirty brush, and you just mix the colors right in the palette. But with colored pencils, it's layering, 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 layering. So now we've got this petal sticking out from behind with some lovely S curves, starting one way, then going the other. I'm going to do it with my green pencil again, very, very lightly, so that we can layer some of these colors. Right here, I see a little swoop. And coming back around. Little point there. And again, curving one way, flipping around, curving the other. And again, looking for those shapes of darkness for the shadows. I'm just going to lightly fill them in with my green. Lightly, lightly, lightly.
Ah, better.
Same thing coming back with my gray. My gray right over the top. we'll keep doing this for the next petal too. I like to look at this petal as two shapes. First, we just have this main shape, and then we have that little piece curling in the back. It's a little easier for me to break it down that way. So I can see that it's starting actually right from that red and yellow bit that we drew in the beginning. So it's going to start way over here. Come down. Go into some kind of little point. Not as far down as that petal we just finished. I'll stop it a little shorter here. Same thing, looking for those darker spots on the inside. And with my green pencil, put that down in there. And again, you would also use blue, or you can use purple. We're using a lot of green in these petals because it's like reflecting the light off of the green leaves. Color and light are so interconnected that way. If this had been a flower planted near some water, we'd be probably using a lot more blue. And I can come back and add this little piece that's flipping around to the back. And it's got just about half of it colored in with shadow. Take my gray also, dull that down. And a few more petals at the top here. I'm going to start with this one that's in the very front. We've got that lovely S curve, a real big swooping curve up, and then a little swooping curve back. You might run out of paper. I think I will. I'm right at the top here. When that happens, just go straight off your paper. If you try to compromise your shapes and smush them in, it'll look like when somebody has a photo sent to you on a computer and they're all smushed or all stretched because they're trying to fit it into a particular dimension. We're just going to let it flow right off the side of the paper if that happens. A little tricky to see, but there's a line right here that's showing where this petal is twisting around, a little bit how that one was twisting around. So I'm going to have mine probably take up that much of the paper. And the rest will have to twist right off the edge. Come in with that green. Give it a little shadow. Right over the top with my gray. I like doing one petal at a time and going through the whole process so that I get a lot of practice and repetition. Some people will do the opposite. They'll draw all the petal shapes first, then do all the shadows in green, then do all the shadows in gray. So whatever makes more sense for you when you're drawing on your own and practicing your own flower fairies, try it out. I'm going for this one here that's fairly straight up on this side. But we have one of these turning actions happening again with this curved line that goes down.
Cut out.
And one more petal poking out. Right
Feel
in
free to
between
mute me anytime.
the two. Okay.
I'll mute you. Let me see here. Where do I go to mute? Stop video chat. No. Boy, it has been a while.
See a little microphone in the lower left, I think. I'm not sure on a Mac, but that's where mine is. I should have prepared some music. Let's see what YouTube's got while you guys are finishing up your first flower here. All right, we're gonna move on to this stem that comes out and then makes a turn. Back to my green pencil and sketching out my straight lines. It's been a while, but I feel like, oh, I don't have any confidence in drawing straight lines. We used to make a little dot as a target. And then we pick our starting point, and I would look at the dot and flick towards it. Then I'd start at the dot and flick back towards my origin point, and I'd just go back and forth until those two segments finally meet up. And you'll get a pretty dang straight line. Then we've got a little bump as I'm sure some plant fibers and magic is happening here in the stem, so I'm going to make that little bump up. And then we'll just gently bring it back down. This is the one that kind of crosses right in front of the fairy's hand, but thankfully she's not holding on to it, so we don't have to be too precise with where this goes. We just don't want it to go straight down our paper. We still want it to have that nice curve kind of to the lower left corner. So I've got my whole arm off the table so I can make these big strokes with my shoulder and my elbow and my whole arm. Anytime you rest your hand on your table, you're limited to your smaller movements, which isn't a bad thing, but it makes life a whole lot harder when you're trying to make big long lines.
I'm turning my paper sideways to get the big.
Oh, that's a good idea
Right.
too. You can just switch it around to wherever it's easiest to make, and then you can do nice
We're
big.
going all
hearts.
the way to the bottom, I think, right?
Yeah, pretty much. If you want to go all the way to the bottom, it does go all the way down to that corner. Keeping it light. You can see I'm making all kinds of lines all over the place, but it's going to be okay because after a while that's going to be all green and brown down there anyway. So it won't stick out too much if I have a stray line here and there. Probably give more energy to the drawing. If you have a light green, I'm going to start using a light green and a dark green so we can get some of this ribbing action that's going on in the stem. If you don't have a light green, you can use yellow and mix it in with the only green that you do have. That'll work also. I'm going to start with my darker color, my darker green. Go right up into that, whoops, right up into that area there. Paper line on the bottom here. And just kind of generally dark right where it meets the petal, that kind of nook and cranny shading. They'll call it some fancy word in art school. Deep occlusion or something like that, but we call them little nook and cranny shadows, where things are way in there and so they don't get hit by the light. I'm also going to sketch out a little curved line here where that stem is going into that bulkier section. And we have this color change here where we're going from the green to more of the tan brown color. So I'm going to stay on the green side here and put a little shadow just to divide that up. And then come back with my light green and go over the whole thing. So to go right over the top of that dark green. Mix things around, blend things up. And you can do that down the whole length of the stem. We'll skip that part of that little brown tannish color here, but everything else coming down here. We've got dark on one side, light on the other. Then I'll take my light green, go right over the top. All the way down that stem. This is pretty much where you're going to decide the thickness of the stem. Because as you can see when I zoom in, I've got stray lines all over the place. And that's okay. Like I said, by the time we color in everything else that's going to be, whoa, let's focus, be in here, then it's okay. That'll just blend in with the rest. So I'm keeping my light green to the shape that I want from the final thickness of my stem, not really coloring inside the lines we used to do with coloring books, but deciding this is how big I want it to be. If you happen to have a light brown and a dark brown, you can get those out. I'm just going to use those same 4 colors we've been using, the yellow, the orange, and the 2 greens. And I'm going to start with my reddish color that I used for the inside of my flower and start coloring in where some of those shadows are. So at the bottom of this kind of bulby part. I'm sure I learned the name of it in plant science and totally forgot about it. But I'm mostly keeping to the left side, just like the left side of the stem is a little darker with our darker green. Keeping it on the bottom. Again, no need to be precise or real symmetrical. This is organic nature, so we can have it a little scribbly looking. Gives it some texture. That was with kind of a medium pressure, but I'm going to color in the whole thing with a light pressure. Just because I don't have brown, so I need to mix all the colors I've got, and the only way to do that with colored pencils is to layer them lightly so that each has a chance to shine through the previous layer. That's just my orange color. Now I'm coming in with my yellow. I'm going to color over the whole thing with my yellow. You can even dip down into the green, try to get this green to blend at the edges here. And if it's not working out so great, you grab your green again and you make another little layer on top, just lightly. Get some of that green to blend in right at the edge. And lastly, to make that patch of orange a little darker, like a shadow, I'm taking my green, my dark green from the stem. I'm going to add a layer of that right on top of the orange only, so that we can get kind of a muddier brown color going. Or like I say, you just grab your brown pencil and that'll do the job too. Woo! One flower done! This is where you take a congratulatory sip of something, give yourself a round of applause. Woohoo! But now comes the fun part. Yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. Ah, all right.
Who needs anything else?
Yeah. Well, I did want to
Pretty
get
flower.
a little fairy in here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So this is kind of the same thing we were talking about, rotating our paper. We could try to draw her face at an angle, or we can just spin our paper until her face is right side up. So I've got my paper at kind of a, what is that, 1 o'clock angle maybe? So that I can go ahead and draw her right side up.
Oh, I see, right.
Yeah. So we're looking at that edge of my paper as the angle you want to kind of copy there. So you can get a dark brown pencil for these lines. Or if your fairy's going to have blue skin, you can get dark blue. If she's going to have pink skin, you can get a darker pink. Whatever color you think the skin's going to be, we're just going to get a darker version of that. And somewhere below here, it doesn't really matter where, we just want to get her a little away from the flower. We're going to start with this little bump of her nose, just like a little check mark with a shorter line there and a longer line there. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little closer here. I'm going to put her maybe right here. Kind of a long line for the top of the nose, a little shorter line for the bottom of the nose. And if you want to round it out, you can do that. You may need to sharpen your pencil for this bit. Get some tiny details here. After you've got that little button nose, you can add one more mark for a little nostril. Tiniest little smidgen of a pencil mark right there. Very close to the first line. And then I'm not going to connect it to the nose. I'm just going to draw this first curve of the mouth and not touch my nose line. I'm just going to put it under there. Very, very close, but not touching. And the bottom mouth line is going to be shorter. So we're getting another little check mark kind of action happening there. Now we can go ahead and round off that lip a bit. And connect that to the bottom of the nose. And then we'll add a little bit larger bump for the chin. Again, if you're not sure of things, keep your strokes very light, whisper light, feather light, because they can always blend into the background later if they're light. If you go down with a real hard grip, a little harder to blend it into everything in the back. Like her chin might be a little big, but later I'll fix it. So then we're going to go to the forehead. We're just going to come up in this very rounded line. Little kids and little fairies have really round faces. And keep that nice and soft. And just so we can compare real lightly, I'm going to give myself some guidelines on the picture here. Kind of the top of the tip of her nose is where the bottom of her eye is. I'm not going to draw that line on my drawing, but I'm going to envision it. That top of the tip of the nose, if I go over a little bit, that's where the bottom of the eye is going to be. And we're just going to make kind of a little pizza shape. Little triangle, and the eyeball part is a little rounder. Then you can grab whatever color eyes you want her to have. I think I'm gonna go with, we'll go with orange. And we'll just color in that little front part, that little crust of the pizza. You want to add a little bit more pressure to the top lid for eyelashes. We don't have to actually draw the individual strokes. We can just thicken up that line a little bit and it'll give the illusion of eyelashes.
Looking for royalty-free music? Discover Epidemic Sound. Find the perfect track for...
We're going to give her a little eyelid, just a line that's very close to that eye. Barely anything, but it does make the expression a little more relaxed.
It does.
Yeah. And then again on my reference, I'm going to show you that the eyebrow here almost just curves right into that top lid there. So even though I'm not going to do the whole stroke on my drawing, I want to kind of imagine this relationship of just this curve from the top of the eye right into the eyebrow. So from the top of the eye, if I were to curve around, just floating my pencil and then touching it down where I want it to make a mark. Doing that a couple of times, just building it up slowly. And then we're going to come down and draw her neck, but let's take a look at where it's going in relation to the face we just made. It's going a little bit more back, diagonally back. So I'm going to go diagonally back a little bit. And then we'll add some hair. You can make the hair wild and free like it is in the reference drawing, or you can pin it up in a ponytail or a bun or whatever you like. I'm gonna grab, let's see, I think I'm gonna give her something fun like blue hair or purple hair or something. Where's my other color pencils? Whichever color you pick to make for her, the color of her hair, you're just gonna need a dark version of that color and a lighter version of that color. And if you don't have a dark and a light, you use the color that's next to it on the rainbow. Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So let's say I only have one purple, but purple's close to blue. And then if we wrap that rainbow around, it would also be close to red. So if I have a red, I can use that. Or if I have a blue, I can use that. So I'm going to be using purple pencil, a blue pencil, and a red pencil. With the purple pencil, I'm going to start making the general shape of it. I think I'm going to give her a ponytail. So I'm going to start with this same line here where it sweeps to the back. A little S curve. Depending on the hairstyle, you might see just a little bit of the bottom of the ear, which should be about at the same level as the mouth. So if I come back from the mouth here, I might see a little bit of an earlobe sticking out there. I'm just going to sketch out the general shape. Maybe put a little strand or two flying away. Curvy, curvy lines. And the same thing with hair as we were talking about with petals, is that we want skinny parts and thick parts. If it's just the same thickness all the way down, it looks more like a noodle, more like spaghetti. And we want this to look like hair. So anytime there's a curve, it'll get either skinnier or it'll get thicker, depending on which the previous one was, if that makes sense. So like here, I made it thin, so the next curve has got to be thick. Well, now that one's thick, so this next one's going to be thin. It's that alternating pattern. For the top of her head here, I'm just thinking about how her head is round underneath. So when I'm drawing the hair, I don't want to use any straight lines. I want to decide, is it going to follow this top curve of her head, or is it going to do the curves that go around the side of the head? One of those two. I don't want any straight lines. Because in mine her hair is up, I'm going to see the back of her neck, so I'm just going to sketch in, whoops, that's not brown. I'm going to sketch in a little line for the back of her neck. It'll be very near her ear. Just put in a little line to guide me. And then I can start adding more hair that comes up from the neck or the base of the skull. I'm going to add some curves where the hair is being pulled back here so that her hairline isn't just painted on. And she'll need a little ribbon or something to hold it back, so I'll just make a little triangle shape with my red pencil. And then we can do some nice big flowing lines with hair. Again, it's usually a big curve and then some kind of little curve. Big curve and then some kind of little curve. After you have a few of those key directions, I've got 3 of them right now. Now I can come back and add that second line that's going to show me which parts are skinny and which parts are thick. Skinny again. This one I'm going to do opposite. I'm going to start out thick, and then we'll get skinny right at that curve, and then we'll get thick again at the end. If drawing hair isn't fun for you, give her a buzz cut. There's always another way. You might end up with kind of an awkward gap like I have here between these 2 pieces of hair. Real easy fix is you just follow one of the lines you already have and then have it go in a different direction. So it just makes that hair combine into a bigger shape now. Once you have your general hair shapes decided, an easy way to color them that looks pretty good is if you get your darker color, your shading color. Actually, I'll just use my purple again. Start at the tip and darken that tip, flicking your pencil when you get to a curve, meaning I'm lifting it up. Lifting it up when I get to this thick section in the middle. Starting at the other end, flick, 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 flick. Leave that bit in the middle white. That's going to be like a shiny spot. Same thing on her head. Down here by her hairline, I can start flicking up toward that ponytail. across the whole hairline here. Making sure that I'm curving with the lines I've already put down. Since these are curving up, I'm going to curve my flicks up. Down here they're curving down, so I'm going to curve my flicking motion down. And here in the middle, I'm going to have to split the difference. Maybe just put a few little marks. And then we repeat from the top, flicking down. Keeps her head nice and round. Looks like she's a star of a shampoo commercial, so shiny hair. Doing the same thing with her ponytail. I'm going to flick outward from that ribbon I had, holding her hair. Trying to follow the directions of the shapes that I've already made. Then I go down and start at the tip. Flick that upward. You might think, well, great, Betsy, but now I got all this big white space in the middle for these longer sections. What do I do now? Pretty much at the end of every curve, you can repeat this. So like on this one where I have all this white space in the middle, there's a curve happening here. So I can treat this as a dark spot. Flick my lines that way. Flick my lines that way. Until I can fill it up a little more with my color. Always trying to follow the curve that you've already drawn for that section of hair. After laying down all those shadows, it's going to be a breeze to come in with your lighter color and just color over the whole section of hair, right over the top. Just for demonstration purposes and comparison, I colored this one with strokes going up and down. And I did this part of the head by following the curves. And you can see how this one flattens out the drawing when I just use these straight strokes. But on the ones where I keep it curved, it'll keep that sensation of it being a curved piece of hair. Sometimes visual comparisons are the easiest way to learn. Okay, do I want that or do I want that? Sometimes you do want it to flatten out. Sometimes you're coloring a brick wall or coloring something that is flat. Let's say you want another color for some little nook and cranny shadows. I've got my blue, and I can just add my blue to a few spots where maybe I want the shadows to be even darker. Optional. But if you like the effect, then that's something you can do. All right, so now we've got a floating girl's head and a flower. Wonderful. Let's see if we can put in a little more information here. I think it's rather cute that her dress matches the flower, so I'm going to stick with those colors, my kind of orangey red and yellow. And we're going to approach it pretty much the same way we did the flower. We're going to start with that neckline and go from there. So our neckline is going to start kind of in the middle of the bottom of her jaw here, maybe about there. I'm going to give myself a little dot target. Then it's going to come down and wrap around right at the base of her neck. So right over here, there's my other target. And I can go ahead and just zigzag my way around. Up and down until I connect one dot to the other. And the same step as the flower, I'm just going to color the inside yellow. And if you want to add some of that nook and cranny shading, I'm going to use my brown pencil here and put in a couple of lines. Dull down that yellow. Then we've got her sleeve that's right next to the collar. In fact, it starts right out of the collar of her dress and comes down in this little half circle shape. So right from that collar, I'm going to start a little zigzaggy line. That goes maybe about that far. If yours goes farther, she just has a little bit poofier, longer sleeves. That's fine. And I'll get my brown pencil and just sketch this front of her dress so that I know where that sleeve ends. A little ruffle. And then I can color it in yellow. Same thing, give it a few little brown lines just to show it. Ruffling back and forth, little nook and cranny shadows. And her other sleeve over here is going to come very close to her collar, but it's a little bit different shape. So I'm going to start with my brown pencil and kind of sketch where that sleeve meets the dress first. So over here by my collar, we have a little curve, just a little one. Start me off. And show the top of that shoulder there. Now I can come back with my pencil and I'll see that the orange is right at the bottom of that sleeve here. Zigzagging back and forth a little bit, little W. And then it's going to go away from that brown line that we just drew. It's going to come over to the right here. So I'm going to keep on zigzagging, giving it some space till it about gets to her hair. Then as it goes around to the back of her arm, the zigzags are going to be way closer together. I'm going to squish them. Put in more frequency of zigs and zags as they get foreshortened. There's a word I'm sure you haven't heard since last art class, huh? Foreshortening. I can color in the space between these two yellow. Just plop it in there real quick. Come back to my brown, and I can add a few lines for those little nook and cranny shadows, little wrinkles. Then we'll come back to the front of her dress here where right after the line we already drew, this front part here, there's only a little bit of space until we get to the little belt ruffle here. So I'm going to go ahead and use my brown pencil to lightly sketch out the curve that belt part is going to follow. And it's going to be coming down on the other side a little bit from her sleeve. Again, just lightly sketching in some landmarks. If you follow these landmarks and she looks, ridiculously skinny or rounder than you want it to, then that's where you can adjust and move your lines around a little bit. I'm going back to my orange so I can make this zigzaggy line that goes all the way around, not touching that brown one. Just wiggling my pencil. As you get to the edges, we're going to do more of that really close zigzagging. And we're going to just have a few little bumps maybe as it goes around to the back. I'm going to thicken that up so it's about the same thickness as the other parts of her dress. Again, it doesn't have to be real mechanically clean. Think of it more like impressionism. We're giving the impression that there's a little ruffle here. And once you have that, you can fill in with yellow right up to that brown line. And same as we've been doing, little brown lines flicking outward. Little shadows. And before we get into drawing the petals of her skirt, you can see there's this one piece of the plant that comes right in front. So I'm going to go back to my green pencil. Zoom back out here. Even though it goes over her belt, I didn't want it to on mine, so that's my choice. I'm the artist. And start sketching out that shape. Keeping my whole arm off the table so I can use all the muscles of my shoulder and elbow and all of that to get these nice long lines. quick little pop of color on one side, or you can have it go kind of to the middle like it does here, and then come back to the other side, wiggle it around. In this part of the plant, there's light bouncing all over the place, so we don't have to stick so much to like just the left side or just the right side. And the rest will be filled in with a light green. And then with my brown pencil again, I'm going to start sketching out the shape of these petals for the skirt. We don't have to get this detailed. This little wiggle in a lot of these edges is just to show the delicateness of the petals here, but to get the job done quickly, you can just do the general shape and it will still look like a flower skirt. This time I'm going to try out the method of sketching all of my shapes first. You can see these petals are getting skinnier and skinnier as they go wrapping around the body. They get more overlapped, get more covered up by the previous one, so we'll see less and less as they curve around her body. In general, these shapes are a little skinnier at the top, wider at the bottom. And then I'm going to use my same brown pencil to get some of these really dark nook and cranny shadows going. So the ones that are like right under the ruffle. Anytime one petal overlaps the other, I'm going to give a little bit of brown there. A little nook and cranny shadow. We've learned that you never just use one pencil with colored pencils. And I'm going to grab my green and go right over the top of those brown shadows. Maybe start coloring some of these lighter shadows in with my green. Just like we did at the very, very beginning with the petals on the first flower. But if that green is too bright, you know, you just grab your gray pencil and you go right over the top and knock down that color. Layering, layering. If you want it to look like just a little edge of this petal has curled over, you can add a little shape, just a little curve to one of your petals. And oh, look at that, it turned over. Just that easy. And I want the bodice of her dress to have the same kind of treatment that we've been giving to the skirt. So I'm going to take my green, I'm going to take a look at these shadows on the side of her body, kind of zigzagging down here, and add some color in on this side. Just lightly, if you're not sure which shape to do, that's okay. We're just going to put in a splotch. Again, thinking of that kind of impressionism mentality, putting in a blob. Too much green, I'll knock it down with my gray. You can even add some yellow or orange if you want, bouncing off of that little belt ruffle and right back onto the bodice. So there might be a little red in these shadows, might be a little yellow in these shadows. Probably find some shadows under the collar of her dress here. And since I gave her purple hair, I can even take that same purple that I did for the dark tips and put a little of that in the shadows. Just where they're closest to the hair. Giving that light and color to have a relationship here. Anytime you're doing your colored pencils and things are just looking a little meh, a little lackluster, try to find a color that only happens in one part of the picture, like the purpleness of her hair, and just add some of that purple into neighboring pieces of the drawing and into the shadows and like that, and then just give it a nice little pop. All right, this girl needs some arms and legs. I'm gonna tackle the worst bit first, the hands. Everybody has trouble with hands, so if you're one of them, you're in good company. This hand here is very close to her face. I'm going to start with her thumb, and the thing with drawing hands is that we always want to find where's the straight side and where's the curved side. So on her thumb here, I can see this straight line here and a little bit more curved line on that side. And lucky us, it lines up pretty well with her chin. So if I go to mine and go to her chin and go over a little bit, straight side of the thumb, curved side of the thumb. And then we're going to connect that straight side of the thumb to this next straight side, which is the rest of her hand coming down here. And she's a fairy, she's got tiny hands, so I'm not gonna make a big line. But from there, we've got this nice curve coming back down to the elbows. I'm gonna give a little curve. And let's say you don't have enough room to draw the rest of her arm. Lucky you, it's hiding behind her body. You don't have to draw it. You're just going to draw it right back into the dress, wherever that might be. Then we'll go back up to the thumb here because we can see, oh, straight line on this side, curved line on this side. And because her fingers are bent, we're going to use two straight lines to get that finger to bend on the top, and then curve, curve going down. So right at the tip of the thumb, tiny little straight line going up, tiny little straight line curving forward. That's it. That's all we're going to start with. Kind of looks like a little spider leg coming out of her thumb. Not the prettiest thing, but that's going to set up that first finger, the back of that index finger, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll just round that tip a little bit. And then come down. It doesn't even have to connect. Your lines don't always have to connect. You're just giving the impression that there's a finger there. The next one here, the straight line starts right at the tip of that index finger. So I can go to the tip of the index finger, give a straight line, not too long. And then the same thing, we're just going to curve it around gently, doesn't even have to connect. And then super duper duper important is this third finger is hiding behind the middle finger. So we're not going to see the whole thing. It's going to look skinnier. Just like with the skirt where it was getting smaller and skinnier shapes as it curved around. This one is getting tucked behind those other fingers, so we're barely going to see anything of it. Whoops. Messed up with my line there. Looks like she dipped her finger in chocolate, but that's okay. Chocolate's delicious. And we'll come down a little bit. You can look at this negative space here, this V between her fingers, to get an idea of where this little finger is going to come up. A little V shape. And this is a rare instance where we've got two curved sides because she's really extending that pinky finger. So both sides are going to curve a little bit like that. This palm needs to go forward a little bit before it goes down. Even though this just looks like a regular old curve, we really want to try to kind of match this line here and get a little parallel action going first. Then we'll curve it down, and that'll just help give some volume to her hand and her palm. Thin wrist, but then we're going to get a little thicker as we go down to the elbow. So I want to be careful that my fairy's arm isn't a noodle, the same thickness all the way down. I want it to get a little chunkier as we get down to the elbow. And then tuck it right behind her body. And then I'll just come back to the thumb and add a little curve to kind of show that overlapping happening between her thumb and the rest of her hand. You can also add a palm line if you like. I'm going to rotate my paper back to its actual orientation, straight up and down, so that we can see her arm is going pretty much horizontal. I'm going to start on the bottom part of the arm and just get this straight line that goes right to her elbow. And how do you know where her elbow is? Well, it's kind of above her waist. Or if you can think of this elbow making a curved line over here, they'll be about, actually a straight line, they'll be about the same length. And I'll come in on the top of the arm, not too wide, she's just a little fairy. we've got that real important size difference between here being thick by the elbow, and then it's going to get thin at the wrist. We used to call them carrots all the time. Carrots have that one thick end, and then they get narrower at the tip. Now here's where you make a decision as an artist. If you go, Betsy, I can't face drawing another hand. It's just too hard. You draw another plant thing coming up, covering her hand. There's always a way out of it. If I wanted to, I could take my green pencil and have a piece of this plant go right over her hand, not even have to draw it. So I'd be like, no, I'm up for the challenge. It's 2022. We're gonna do great things. We're gonna draw great hands, and we'll go ahead and do that. A little bit covered up by a plant on this one, but I'm going to pretend it's not, because really, again, it's just straight lines, right? We've got a straight line for the back of her hand. Take your best guess at how long that is, because all of the lines after it are going to be shorter. If this one is the long one, next we've got a medium one for the top of her finger. Like, okay, a little shorter, medium. And then the next one is going to be even shorter. About long, medium, short. Since these are all the straight sides, this one must be the curved side. So I'm just going to make that little curve of a fingertip. Little curve. We're working so small, you might not even be able to curve it. That's okay. And then her thumb, the straight line on top here, is going to point right at that part where it bent. So I'm going to put that straight line of her thumb right near the bottom of that index finger. Curve it around. And you can connect that right back down to the wrist if you like, just to get an idea of where we're going with these shapes. Here's the thumb and the palm, and then we've got that index finger. So then we just have a part of a finger showing behind. It's being overlapped so much that we can only see this little tip. So I'll just draw another straight little line, a little curved line there. There's another finger. And oh, surprise, surprise, we've got another little negative space V happening over here. It's sideways this time, but it's still a V. So if I think of this as my first side of my V, then I'll have another little V, and that'll show me where her pinky is once again being extended. Flat on top, a little rounded on the bottom. And I do want to try to match this direction again for the other side of her palm before I connect it in. You might be able to see a little bit of another finger under there. If not, another trick is to just color in all the fingers that are in the back to give that sense of depth. So that's all in shadow, and then only the thumb and the index finger are in the light. There's always a way. If it's not looking right, there's always a way to make it a little bit better. And funny enough, sometimes it's just obscuring it a little bit. We're actually removing detail when we fill it in with this shading color. But sometimes it's just a little more believable that way. All right, we've got 2 arms, 2 hands. Need some legs. I doubt I'll be able to fit all of her legs on my paper, but we'll try our best here. We're going to start with his leg in front. And right at the bottom of her skirt, we're going to get this bump for the knee. And that's just going to be a little curve right there. You can put it pretty much anywhere because she could be swinging her leg anywhere she wants. And it might look straight, but this line here for the shin that goes from the bottom of the knee to the top of the ankle, that's going to reverse curve ever so slightly. I try to avoid using straight lines when I'm drawing humanoid bodies because it just doesn't happen. Even bones aren't perfectly straight like they are in cartoons. I'm going to put just the slightest of curves there. Another tiny little bump for the ankle, top of the ankle there. I'm doing this part right there. Then we'll go to the back of the knee. It's going to follow that same curve, but just not be as curvy. It'll be a little shallower, a little straighter. If you're not sure how thick to make it, you can compare that her thigh is definitely going to be thicker than her upper arm. So that's one way to kind of gauge how thick that needs to be. Rather than trying to go from this knee and make a perfect curve down to the ankle, I find it a little easier to make my ankle the thickness I want it to make, which should not be as thick as the knee. It should be thinner, right? So I'm going to give myself that target. That's where I want to end up. And I also want to make sure that most of the calf muscle's at the top. I don't want to just make an even curve from the back of the knee to the ankle. It'll look a little funny. We want the majority of the muscle to be near the top. So I'm going to make my curve up here for my calf muscle first, about halfway down. After that, it kind of straightens out. Not perfectly straight, but straighter. And that'll give her a nice little fairy leg. If you have room for the foot, we're going to continue that down and sweep it up for her toe. So it's a little bit of a curve at the end. And that's going to be your big toe. So I'm going to curve that around one little toe. And then I'm actually going to go over and end with the baby toe because the baby toe is going to overlap all the other toes. So it's easier to draw from the one that's closest to us and then go around to the ones that are getting more covered up than the other way around. So once I have that baby toe in there, I can just draw in a curve for the next toe and the next toe. Don't lose count. And the next toe. I have drawn a five-legged wolf before. It happens. Then for the heel, we're going to make that line go pretty sharply outward first and wrap it around and then come down and connect to the foot. You want almost a right angle on that heel. You can put your little ankle bump in there too if you like. Oh goodness, almost 5:30 already. Okay, we can get in this other leg. I'm pretty sure.
And be on our own for wings. Oh boy, we can do wings.
We can do it, or else I'll just film the rest on my own and then we'll put it up with the YouTube video. So her other knee, you might be able to see a little bit of it behind that first knee. Just a little curve in there. And that shin is going to be just a gentle curve. About the same length as the first shin. Little diagonal line for the top of the foot. Ending in that big toe, straight on top, curved on the bottom. Luckily on this foot we don't have to draw all the toes, we just maybe have one more little bump behind that back toe to show that there are other toes, indicate they're there, you just can't see them. On the other side, once again, I'm going to pick how thick do I want that ankle, about the same thickness as the first one. Give myself a little target. Keep that calf muscle near the knee and then a little straighter as it goes down to the ankle. I have a plant that is conveniently covering up her heel, but if yours doesn't, you want to kick that line back a little bit, make that right angle, and then connect up the foot. You may remember from other fairy classes, but we used to take a little bit of peach or a little light red and color in the fingertips, the elbows, the ankles, basically all the joints, just to give a little variation to the skin tone. So real quick, I'm just going to color in her fingertips, elbow, using that same kind of orangey red that I used for the border of her ruffles. And the border on the flower as well. Ankles, toes, knees. Little on the tip of the nose and the cheeks. When you do the cheek, it's going to be just on the front here. It's not going to be like a circle. It'll be more like an oval, since she's in a side view here. You can do her earlobes if you want. Your lips a little bit. A little shadow on the neck. And then get your lighter color or slightly different color. And try out, what is this? Salmon pink, let's try that. And just lightly fill in the rest of the skin. I'm gonna get my purple just so it kind of matches her hair, but you can use your brown pencil or yellow or any kind of color. I'm gonna look at how the bottom section of the wing is actually overlapping the top one, since her wings are folded back. So I'm just gonna sketch out the shape, and you can do whatever shape you want. If you like butterfly wings, use butterfly wings. Make up your own shape, it's all good. I'm just going to give myself a light shape there for the bottom part. The top section of the wing typically is bigger, so I'm going to make that a bigger shape. I'm just going to make it up and round it off this time. And whatever shape you did for the top part of the wing, we're going to do it one more time, but we're going to squish it so that it looks like it's coming off the other side of her back. Using that foreshortening. In the original picture, she has all kinds of colors in her wings. I'm just going to stick to purple and maybe one other color. I'm going to sketch in a couple of lines. I just divide up this wing into some rows. Maybe 2 there, and then switch directions. So maybe then this one will go this way. Divide it once again, a little bit of a kind of a basket pattern. We just want to divide the wing up into smaller sections. And you can do that in a variety of ways, and it'll still look like wings, so you don't have to worry too much about getting the shapes exactly like mine. I'm just going to divide them up with some diagonal lines. Don't forget that other wing in the back as well. And I'll get my other color. I'll probably use the red. And I want to try to do a little bit of a gradient effect, a little bit of a fading effect. So I'm going to put more pressure on my pencil where it's near her body, and then lighten my touch as it goes away from her body and towards the tip of the wings. You can also get this effect just by using the same amount of pressure and going over the parts that are close to her body more times, putting down more layers. And that'll give you a nice smooth color transition. Just like with the hair, I'm not coloring in the entire wing. You can if you want to, but this will give the illusion of light hitting them, just like light was hitting the hair. Just gonna make my touch softer and softer and softer until my pencil lifts off the paper. And to give it a little bit of interest, I'm going to come in with my blue and just color in the center of a couple of those sections that I made when I was dividing up the wing. Don't have to worry about going all the way to the lines. Just that impression of different like little cells or little divisions in the wing. It's not quite finished, but I'll sign it anyway. Today's what? January 5th. My goodness. 1/5/22.
Jeez, scary.
Yeah.
One day closer to summer.
Yeah.
Not that I'm counting.
I
I'm
think you
counting.
counted, right? Yeah.